So I'm going to be talking about the Nintendo Wii. I'm going to start out kind of with a history of Nintendo. I'm assuming, I think half the crowd probably knows a lot and half the crowd doesn't, so I figured I'd start at the lowest common denominator. Just waiting for the slide transition. I'm Mike Oren. I think Derek already said that. Okay. It's a long 15 seconds. How's everybody doing? Okay, so Nintendo started out as a playing card company. They're actually about 150 years old, so about as old as Iowa State. And they started out making playing cards. Even people who are big followers of Nintendo aren't aware of that, so I thought I'd mention that. It's kind of interesting. Company, like you've got all these electronic giants, and then you've got this little playing card company. So, okay, so it started, the home console scene really started with Atari. Atari was an American company. They did well for a while, but then they kind of flopped. They kind of fizzled out. There was a big video game crash in the mid-1980s, and they were one of the victims. And that was because of Pong 25. All Atari really had was Pong and Pong clones. They had little dots that ran around on the screen, and you tried to get other little dots and collect more dots. So basically all they had were games that were pretty much the same. So then Mario came along, and Mario rescued the video game industry. People thought that the video game industry was done when Atari died. Nintendo came. No retailer wanted to carry Nintendo. Nintendo convinced the retailers they wanted it, and mostly because of Mario. So then became the Nintendopoly. It was Nintendo's monopoly on the video game industry. They wouldn't let retailers sell any video game systems by any other company. So people like TurboGrafx, NEC's TurboGrafx came along. The retailers were afraid of it. They wouldn't sell it. And then Sega came along. Sega was Nintendo's nightmare, pretty much. They got the retailers to let them in, and then Sega, after a while, the Genesis actually toppled the Super Nintendo as the highest console. And then around that time, Sony contacted Nintendo to make the CD attachment to the Super Nintendo, and Nintendo kind of turned them down. This, Nintendo would later learn, was a big mistake. But after that big mistake, they decided to partner with Philips slightly on CDI. It's the only other system that's not Nintendo that you can find Zelda on. It was a really bad version of Zelda, but there was Zelda. And this was kind of like the Wii prequel, because it was played with a remote control. But then, next generation, we have the big three. This is the first time you've had three companies in the video game industry that are actually successful: Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo. Normally it's just two, and normally there's one that's way above the others. So last system was this big three. Nintendo was the first in profit. They made more money by a lot than either Microsoft, which was $2 billion in debt, or Sony, which made profit but not quite as much. But they had the least number of sales. Microsoft beat them by about 2 million. So then there's the Red Ocean strategy, which is Sony and Microsoft's strategy on more power, and that's it. I mean, Sony's controller, how much has it changed since the PlayStation 1? They changed it halfway through the PlayStation 1 to add the analog sticks, but that was only after Nintendo added the analog stick to their Nintendo 64 controller. Then we also had the handheld wars. Nintendo has dominated handheld since the Game Boy came out. Nobody's been able to touch them. So Sony came out with the PSP. It was horsepower. DS, all the gaming magazines called it a gimmick. Well, you can see that their hardware and software managed to allow the combination of hardware and software managed Nintendo to beat this horsepower that everybody was talking about. Everybody talked about the horsepower. Nobody talked about the innovation of the DS. So then we've got Nintendo's Blue Ocean strategy, which is about reaching out to a wider community, which is what the DS was about. It was about taking innovative technology, taking technologies that are out there, but using it in new ways, or having actual software that utilizes. I mean, touchscreen's been around with PDAs, but nobody really used it. There's also the rise of the gray gamers. People who grew up with Atari are now playing games. We also have people who never played games before now playing games like Nintendo's Brain Age for the DS, which allows you to kind of like improve your mind or improve your thought process. And then the revolution begins, which is Nintendo's rise from the ashes of what Nintendo had fallen to after with the GameCube. And actually, the revolution is also the name of the Wii before it became the Wii. So the Wii was ignored by the media when it first came out. Whenever you saw articles about the console wars, you heard about the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360. Very rarely, even in gaming magazines, did you hear about Nintendo's Wii. After the GameCube's failure, most people thought, hey, no big deal. It was also ignored by publishers. EA kind of gave it a tribute effort. The only publisher that really pushed it was Ubisoft. makers of Rayman and games Prince of Persia. But otherwise, it was pretty much ignored. However, so far they sold twice as many units during the launch period as their competitors. So they've done a great job. You can't find them on the shelf. You can if you're willing to wait an hour and a half in the cold, although it's not so cold, so not a big deal. So thank you.